Hello, I'm Emma Irwin, and I'm a solution engineer with Dataiku. Today, I'm going to walk you through a demonstration of Dataiku's flagship product called Dataiku Data Science Studio, sometimes known as DSS, which is a collaborative data science software platform for teams of data scientists, data analysts, engineers to explore, prototype, build, and deliver their own products more efficiently. At a high level, we are trying to build an end-to-end solution that will bring you from data access to operationalized models. A world where each individual contributor, whether it's a business analyst, a data scientist, a data engineer, or an analytics leader, is able to bring their unique skills to the project, make an impact, and ultimately receive some asset, whether that's a model in operation, a dashboard or a report, or some type of business recommendation that can be used to make the business better. So you'll see on the screen, we have business analysts who do model prototyping, integrate work together with the data scientist who maybe builds plugins or extends their own productivity with code through Dataiku, analytics leaders who are monitoring ultimate results, and data engineers who are optimizing the speed and integrating various new technologies all together. And they do this with what we call flows. So here on the screen is what a data project or a flow looks like in Dataiku. And so you'll see on the left-hand side, everything starts with data cataloging and connectivity. Then preparation, which could sometimes be called enrichment or transformation, as well as the option to use our auto machine learning or your favorite code language to write models, and then put that model into production. What we've built, we believe, future-proofs all of the effort you put in today for the future, because you can leverage existing skills and ensure availability of expertise with the knowledge your individual users will bring in languages like Python, R, SQL, and more, while using your current infrastructure, but also be available and open to potentially the infrastructure of tomorrow, maximizing the usage of most of your up-to-date technologies, so whether they're open source or proprietary, and extending the capabilities of other tools that you may be already using, like Power BI or Tableau, etc. We really connect to a full ecosystem of languages, infrastructure, and business tools to make that end-to-end vision possible. And with that, I will show you the tool itself. I'll flip right over here, and you'll see that I'm sitting right now within the Dataiku homepage. The homepage that you're seeing is within a browser, and Dataiku itself is installed on a Linux server, either on-prem or in the cloud, we don't care. But it is integral to our model of being centralized and bringing each of your users together. Thus, each user logs into their favorite browser, accesses the data that they need, and works on projects, as you see, with their various teammates. This is the demo instance I have with my team and all of the products we work on, as well as some dashboards we've created for visualizations, wikis to get more information, and this toggleable menu at the bottom that will help you either onboard or upskill with tutorials, videos, demos, and sample use cases. To start a new project, just click New Project, and you can begin with a blank, a tutorial, a sample, or import something created in another instance. And management is centralized as well. You'll see here, you again have that access to projects, but you also have a searchable catalog, which provides value in being able to tag and identify all items within the platform, either by what project they're in, what tags are on them, who contributed it, or what type of asset it is itself. If, for example, I know that there's information about my customers, but I'm not sure which table or even database it's stored in, I can look for things labeled customers and sort through, get information about what project they're in, when it was created, as well as what columns are in that table to see, is this the one I really want? In addition, plugins can be managed from this menu as well. Plugins are code extensions of the Dataiku platform that are free to use for you, created either by our R&D team or by clients who just love creating. And they can be found on what we call the Dataiku plugin store, but is really just a free collab of these various plugins. Either by type or by topic, you can begin to look, let's say, for languages, so extension to add support for Julia, by machine learning, so machine learning assisted labeling, the option for clustering, or if I was interested more by topic, I could do that as well. And each of those can be added in this menu. Finally, I'll show you centralized administration, which helps you sort out your licenses, your connections, let's say to Snowflake, put in your host, database, warehouse, role, and user, and you're good to go. Same with Postgres or SAP HANA, really any of these providers. You manage this connection from one location, and that data is then available to whoever you give permission to. This will help to centralize that information and make administration a lot simpler. Another way to make administration simpler is with this idea of code environments. Code environments for Python or R are built with default packages for Dataiku to run and for the API to work, and then requested packages, which in this case could be pip installed into this environment and used for specific recipes as you move forward. This gives you one place to update and allows you to toggle between them as you go about building out your project. And with that, I'll jump in to a project we've been working on. Right here is called Campaign Response Prediction. This is a project, as described here in the wiki, with the goal to predict if a client will subscribe, that is, say yes or no, to a new product called a term deposit. It's information and data that is related to a direct marketing campaign of a Portuguese banking institution. And the marketing campaign was based on phone calls. So often more than one contact to the same client was required. And then ultimately the goal was to get to an end state where they said, yes, I am willing to buy this, or no, I am not willing to. Not only was client data specifically used, so things about the individual, like their age or their job or their marital status, but information about the social and economic context, so things happening in the world at that time, like the employment variation rate or the Euribor 3-month rate, which is like a exchange rate tracker, information about the campaign itself, and other attributes were all included. Tasks that had to do with creating this project could be listed here. And this, for example, demoing this project, that's me. I can click off. This project's specific timeline is held on our right-hand side, where you can see who and what was happening within the project. Although if you need further information, we do use get for version control, so you can always go back and check individual commits, as well as revert back to specific changes. As you can see here, reverting to this revision or reverting this change only. And we provide the option to add a remote, either with your SSH or HTTP URL for that remote, so that changes can be tracked remotely or in your team's specific Git repository. From there, lastly, I'll show the flow has various assets, datasets, recipes, models, and more, and we can view them in that visual fashion here. On the left-hand side, you'll notice we've uploaded data from flat files, from PostgreSQL, that's that unfilled elephant. But if I was interested in additional information from a relational database, such as Vertica or Teradata, I could set that up here. I could pull information from one of my cloud providers, NoSQL, open source information like the census data, or if it's stored in a specific link, or again, just from my own local instance. When I click on one of these data sets, I'm exposed to a host of options for visual recipes, which is a point and click operation, or code recipes, which will open a notebook-like interface for interaction with the data. For example, this data set, which is my marketing campaign training client info, opens to show me similar to an Excel format that you're likely used to seeing. Columnar format, right? Row ID, page, job, these are all the titles from the underlying data source. And then how they're stored in that data source and any type of inferred meaning with a validity schema as well. So in default, if I click Analyze, you'll see I have a whole bunch of unknown values. These unknown values are not valid for the specific column, and so Dataiku is identifying them upfront, as well as the option to explore this a little bit further, either by changing up my sample and seeing more records. See how that changes. Creating some basic charts, such as the number of people who actually did say yes or no to my term deposit. Doing some entry statistics. Here's a univariate analysis on 4 variables, bivariate analysis on 3 variables, and again, univariate. If I wanted to create some further ones, I can click into the variables I want to use as factors. Let's say age, job, marital status, and loan, and whether or not they impacted my term deposit. How does that look? You can see some information based on the box plot, histogram, and mosaic plot, as well as frequency tables and summary values. So here in age, it's a pretty even split between yes and no, whereas in the 20 to 40, the no's were a lot higher. You can start to get some insights on who may be more interesting to target. Going back to the flow, if I wasn't satisfied with the amount of data I saw there, or if I just had some code I had previously written and wanted to import, I could open up a code recipe, store it, and start to write some information, do my own type of analysis, even get a potential code sample. So, for example, get statistics on all columns, on single columns, and insert that. Or bin specific columns, etc. Or if I have a group of users who are more adept at coding than others, they can add their own sample that can be reused by individual users at all times. And this is where this code environment becomes useful. I can choose whether to inherit a code environment or select my own with a specific set of packages. Finally, if I want to edit this in a notebook instead of the previous user interface, I can. And in fact, I have a few notebooks already, such as this one for some statistical analysis. That give me a lot of flexibility. If, however, I want to follow the path of this project, I can click next into our join. A join, which is chosen from here, very similar to a SQL join. And you'll notice we have 3 data sets on the left, which combine to become 1, based on the point and click choices made here. In this case, we're using a left join. This is chosen under join type. However, if I preferred an inner join, I could swap here, right join, etc. But in this case, I want to keep all the rows of the left data set and add information from the right data set, so I choose left join on the condition of row ID, which is the shared column in these 2 data sets. I could swap it or change the join feature, such as contains or starts with, is strictly before, for example. But we'll stick with equality for now, and I'll show you what the output should look like. You'll see the various columns. Choose run and go back to the flow, and you'll see we're building out this new data set, which is a lot bigger than we previously saw, and includes information about the individuals, the campaign, and that sort of context-related information. Here it might be more interesting to do a chart, so we could always work on that, add a few extras, and publish them. Or we might be ready to start preparing the data. Preparing or cleaning the data is represented by this little broom, and the broom itself can be clicked into, and we can begin to generate a script. A script is a more advanced way to prep your data than something in, let's say, an Excel spreadsheet, because what is happening here is we're providing you with roughly 95, see them at the bottom, various processors or ways to transform your data. But we're also maintaining a record here of all of the steps. Thus, if you wanted to repeat the same operation against a slightly different or updated data set, or even if you wanted to copy or duplicate a specific step, you could do that. And this way, if someone moves off a project or leaves the company, their work is always maintained in perpetuity. The last thing I'll say about that is you can also add comments that might make what you're doing a little bit more obvious to the next user. So what is this actually doing? Well, we can use the eyeball to preview what had happened. And in this case, note that we're performing a 2 upper on all of the columns, marital, job, and education. And in my term deposit column, which is right here, I went from having yeses and nos to zeros and ones, which will allow me to perform calculations against that column in the future. But I'm not limited. I can find and replace, split columns, transform strings, write a formula, which looks very similar to a Excel formula. Here are some examples. So max is if statements and some like evaluation style as well. If I am able to do most of the steps through point and click, but there's something that I need to be able to do with code, I can edit some Python, define a process here with a return value, and set an output column. Again, code samples are possible, and everything is tracked. That again is run. And something I'll point out here is that because we joined the data previously into PostgreSQL, we now have the option to run this recipe in database because all of the data is living in Postgres. In this case, this will be faster because while we are viewing some changes on screen, that's against a sample of the data. And if we want to run this, it would make the most sense to push down these commands to the database that is holding the data. That way we have the smallest amount of data movement as possible. Now that we've cleaned and prepared our data set, we have this here, we're able to actually move on to creating a model. There's a bunch of ways to do this, but I'll click into Lab. And you'll see I now have the choice to do new analysis, AutoML prediction, which is a way of saying you want to do supervised machine learning on a labeled data set, AutoML clustering, so unsupervised machine learning on an unlabeled data set, or deep learning, so creating a neural net, for example. But we're going to do prediction. We're choosing prediction because we have a specific feature that we want to predict for, right? So in this case, we have a term deposit, subscribe to yes, no. We can go into expert mode, but for the sake of this demo, I'll click quick prototype and create. Now, Dataiku has automatically generated 2 algorithms with 20 features. We can train that. And while we train it, we'll look at the design tab, which shows how it's training. So we have our target. This is a 2-class classification. Either the choice is yes or no on the term deposit. We've got this training and testing set at 80-20 and splitting the data. And we're optimizing right now for AUC, so area under the curve. You can see some information about the cost matrix in the left, as well as a place to choose our features. In this case, unique identifiers are automatically rejected because they provide no value in a prediction, and our target variable is identified as well. If, for example, I know that one of these is not going to be important, I can click it off immediately. And I might do that now for duration. So duration is the amount of time that the individual client was on the phone with the marketing company. And I'll turn that off because I don't believe that it generalizes well to new data before we do a campaign, because if they're being called, they're already within the campaign. Feature generation, however, I can turn on a broad view to create new features, either linear or polynomial. And feature reduction, as well as algorithm selection, are possible. And you'll notice I'm making a bunch of these changes while my training session was happening. That's okay though. As soon as I click train again, my new features and algorithm choices will take place. And I actually have these separated into various sessions. This is one of the things I think is most exciting about the Dataiku platform, is the fact that it eliminates a lot of the busy work that takes place in data science. So for example, working within the Jupyter Notebook and taking screenshots or jotting things down on paper, making sure to record accuracy, precision, ROC, and other metrics you no longer have to do. And that's because everything is recorded in these sessions, and you can actually view it under this table tab to see from one location, sorting based on various factors, or when it was trained, or how long it took to train. And you can focus more on the actual data science, the more difficult work. You might be thinking, well, actually, I can't use one of these models. They wouldn't be precise enough for what I do. If that's the case, although unlikely, you can choose an algorithm under algorithms, the option to add custom models. So if you have a model that has been previously built, or you want to build in conjunction with the auto-generated algorithms, you can do that here. Again, with code samples for some of the most common. And if that's the case, they will be listed under the sessions as well. So you can rank everything from one location. Once you've got something trained, you can click in to view more information. For example, in our random forest, I can see interpretation, performance, and model information. Under interpretation, I have a decision tree that will show where each decision choice was made. I can make changes here. I'll also view variable importance. So sort of potentially surprising is that we see that the top indicators or variables that led to the choice of an individual actually accepting our new deposit had nothing to do with the individual itself and everything to do with the sort of economic state of the world at the time that they were contacted. Then, on the individual, one of the factors was that the contact is cellular. Then the month is May, then their age, and then if they'd been previously contacted. So a lot of information to unpack from here. You can also create partial dependence plots, as well as do subpopulation analysis or get individual explanations. Once this is done training, I'll show you. So here we can see a correlation between the age of an individual and the likelihood of them purchasing our product, as well as a gray bar for distribution of actual results. And so in this case, I'm seeing a huge spike to the right for older individuals, but a really small distribution. So I may be able to discount some of this because of it being so insignificant as part of the larger data set, but something to consider and look through. Finally, if we're not trying to just interpret our model, but also view how it performed, again, knowing that this was trained on data where we had a solution, we can check out the confusion matrix for predicted results versus actually 1, predicted versus actually 0, etc., and the cost matrix. We have a decision chart, ROC curve, and more. And again, like I mentioned, all of the model information about how it was trained will be down in here with the features that were chosen, the algorithm, parameter optimization, and training information. And if we like one of the choices we have, we can deploy it to our flow, as we've done here. From the flow, we can create an API endpoint to test new entries. We can evaluate, which is what is here, look at the metrics for each training of this particular model. How did it perform? As well as the individual records. Notice this looks similar to what we saw at the beginning with the actual results, so false, false, true, 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 the probability of it being false or true, and then its actual prediction. And then the right-hand side, although this is a lot of saying the word false and true, actually tells us, was the prediction correct as in true, or was the prediction incorrect as in false? Now, from here, you can create charts or visualizations of how well you're performing and post them all onto a dashboard, which we have, that may work as a report on how well your individual team is doing. So we created this model that was, false 275 times and true or correct 1,700 times, with a goal statement, some information about how it was trained, and those metrics at the bottom. Or you might want to create a dashboard that presents information on the recommendations or a path forward or the most important variables. But these can all be exported and saved, PDF, JPEG, or with some of the extensions turned into an output for Tableau or Power BI, etc. They can also be set on what we call a scenario to be automated. And we just add a trigger. So let's say time-based can happen once per hour, once per day, etc. And then you choose what you would like to happen. So would you like to rebuild your model? Would you like to run specific checks? Or would you like to refresh different statistics, etc.? And have this be constantly updated for you and your users. And then finally, the last thing I'll show today is this option to also create web apps. Web apps can be done with standard HTML, JavaScript, CSS, or with RShiny or Python Bokeh. And they can be interactive extensions of the projects that you work on to provide additional value for your end users. I know that was a ton of information to digest, but I hope that you got a sense of some of the value that Dataiku can provide, being an end-to-end data science platform that really does appeal to those who want a no-code, a low-code, or a full-code solution with governance and extensibility. If it did interest you and you want to try it out for yourself, we do have a free trial version on our website, which you can download locally, do as a hosted trial, or install on a cloud provider using like an Amazon AMI. And from that same page, you can request a sort of personalized demonstration that will work on a use case more specific to your industry or your use. So I hope you enjoyed and looking forward to working with you in the future. Good luck in your data projects.